Fearsome Critters, the collection of an extremely varied group of fantastical monsters living in the campfire tales of logging camps that dotted North America during the turn of the 20th century. Lumberjacks explained strange noises, natural phenomena, and everyday occurrences with these fabulous beings, providing either serious or facetious reasoning. Fooling strangers, teasing greenhorns, or simply entertaining each other with tales of odd animals, they became widespread and part of woodcutter culture. In an attempt to preserve this fragment of human history, which stands as a testament to the vast imagination of the species, numerous scholars immortalize what they could with pen and paper, producing numerous books on the subject. You might have already heard of a few, as this is not the first time I am talking about this subject, and is most definitely not going to be the last either. In fact, this very channel started out as an exploration of the X-Handle Hound and the possibility of a realistic version. That canine curiosity was primarily documented in the most famous of the books, Fearsome Critters, but it would be incorrect to assume every snippet of information was recorded there. With how many lumberjack camps existed, how many nights these men spent spinning their tales, and how short the human memory can really be, not only details of certain creatures, but entire monsters were most definitely lost to time. Since these beings were most commonly preserved through oral tradition, their longevity was always questionable. Fortunately, however, these books are not the only source of lumberjack lore to be found. Second-hand reports and anonymous writings preserved some of these stories, and while their authenticity is questionable, they are intriguing pieces all the same. While sifting through a couple of these off-brand critters, I found what little I could about a curious being of these woodland legends, a haunter of pine forests, the vicious Martaaves. Martaaves? I honestly have no idea how to pronounce the name, but I'll keep saying Martaaves. Generally, most fearsome critters have a name that is a play on words, self-explanatory, or funny sounding. There are exceptions, naturally, but I do think there is a weird logic here. This animal is a bird, for which the Latin plural would be aves. Well, it would have a little wavy line atop the E, but close enough. It is used in this form to denote the class of birds after all. As for the first half, it could be a random sequence of letters or a slightly distorted version of the name Martha. Why did you say that name? But unlike the butt end, it doesn't really have any relevance to the critter. So, what is this obscure and mysterious bird called Martaaves? Well, I called it a bird, but it is simply denoted as bird-like. Sporting curling tusks that are strong enough to break bones and sharp enough to cut open entrails. It does live up to the fearsome name, but this is only the beginning. These entities are nocturnal, appearing during foggy nights. They are easily spotted as they emit a spectral glow that illuminates the mist around them. That light is a stern warning as the Martaaves matches its savage appearance with a similar temperament. Even though they are said to eat fish, they do not condemn human meat either. Yes, the ghastly mammoth bird wants a piece of you, and in more ways than one. While in most cases they hunt and kill people to eat them, sometimes their hunger is not the only thing that needs to be satiated. Their tusk is not the only thing they want to stick into you. If it wasn't pretty obvious already, they reproduce in a, let's say, unique way. They mate with humans. Yeah. Now, the accounts do not go into any depth as to what gender they are exactly after, or whether both male and female Martaaves are looking for a good time, if there even are male and female. The lack of detail on this part and this general weirdness would make me assume that this is purely a joke creature, meant to mess with visitors or scare youngsters. However, it seems this was most likely not the case, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I have mentioned that these birds are not after seed. Well, not that kind of seed anyway. They primarily feed on fish, as I've stated before. This is a very small detail, which would have me assume it is solely included due to its habitat. Martaaves live near bodies of water as they are aquatic birds. Once you place the pieces next to each other, a rather clear origin and purpose seems to manifest for this critter. Picture a camp near a lake or flowing river. Fish, frogs, and a variety of other animals still active at night often make splashing noises. For someone who is used to the sound of the wilderness, it's nothing out of the ordinary. However, for someone who is a stranger to that particular environment, it may be odd, scary even. Such a situation is ripe for messing around. Add to this the tale of a vicious water monster, one that is not limited to roam the waves. It is a bird, fast-flying and ravenous for human flesh. What is its calling card? Well, a faint light illuminating the fog, naturally. Something easy to reproduce with a 2Z hand. The result of all this setup is a terrified visitor or greenhorn, who will most likely produce a log of his own if one of your mates plays around in the dark with some matches or a dimmed lamp. The popped cherry on top is the prospect of avian butt sex. While this seems like a very plausible origin story, some of the people hoodwinked by the Martaaves I don't think there's an actual plural form. Anyway, a portion of those deceived by the crafty lumberjacks were more deeply affected. They truly believed this fluorescent bird with a weird fetish existed. We know this because this is the exact way tales of the creature were preserved. Second-hand reports of an event involving quite a few avid believers who did something pretty bad in their delusion. Well, they might have done something bad, it's not exactly clear. During the early 1900s, which was still prime time for fearsome critter tales, a traveler was said to have encountered a Martaaves somewhere near Lake Superior. A man by the name of Brandon E. Sharp. He spoke of this to the locals in a nearby small town, and in turn he was informed of the great danger the beast posed. They told him the monster dwelt there even before European settlers arrived, and terrorized local indigenous tribes all the same. As a tale within the tale, the townsfolk recounted an old native legend of the Martaaves. It is said that a brave warrior of one of the tribes attempted to use spells and charms to draw the animal out of hiding and murder it in daylight. However, the would-be hero never returned, and none were brave enough to try kill the monster ever since. Fearing the razor-sharp tusks of the vicious creature, no one in the region dares to go out on misty nights, locking every door and window until dawn. Brandon was a curious man, and the tale only made him want to seek the bird out more. Despite the pleas of the locals, he planned to set out the following day armed with a notebook for sketches and a rifle for safety. Fearing he would enrage the feathered devil, bringing its wrath upon the settlement, the townsfolk could not let him do that. A few of them formed a party under the guise of hunting and decided to follow Brandon into the woods. As you can expect, they were past the point of trying to convince him, and their intent was far darker. That day, Brandon E. Sharp met his end at the wrong end of a rifle. Deep in the woods, with not a soul around to weep for him. The party of murderers, however, did not intend to leave the body where it hit the ground, lest law enforcement comes down upon them. They had to get rid of it, and there was only one convenient place to do it. The lake where Brandon saw the Martaaves. They threw the corpse into the water, but as it hit the surface, it awoke something lurking in the depths. The Martaaves cared little that it was a sunny morning and not a foggy night. It was roused from its slumber all the same. One by one the killers were caught and pulled under the water. Their bodies only found days later, with their blood and brains missing. Apparently the moral of this story is that you should be happy with what you have, as it can always be worse. In this case, the townsfolk should have been happy they are terrorized by a supernatural monster, with a buffoon potentially making it terrorize them even more. I mean, murder was not the right call, but I don't think the moral really fits. Regardless, this has little bearing on the overall account. As you can see, it is far from first-hand. It's the written form of a retelling of a story by people who were not witness to the most notable events therein, linked to a bird monster originating from different tales. Still, it's the best we've got, and if nothing else, it highlights how important even minor notes and fragmented recordings can be when investigating the past. Now, however obscure, I am not the first one to take a look at this creature and the attached story, trying to make sense of it, obviously. In fact, the theory about how it was originally a joke creature that got distorted and exaggerated in the tales of people who were strangers to the idea of fearsome critters is widely regarded as the most likely explanation. Unfortunately though, cryptozoologists spotted this horned avian as well and proceeded to batch out its own theories. Naturally, tales of a vicious man-eating bird with spiky mouth bits caused speculators to come to the coolest possible conclusion they could think up. Hence the idea of a tusked, terror bird materialized, one possibly related to the famous Titanus valerii, one of the species that did indeed inhabit North America. Mix in ideas of fluorescent organs attracting fish during the night, not unlike an anglerfish, and you get the wet dream of a Haque zoologist. Potential forms of terror birds with organic fishing rods or LED toes were theorized, with the tusk serving as a spear with which to impale the prey. I mean, one would think the design of herons would be far more efficient at piercing aquatic food than appendages beside the massive predatory beak, but what do I know? I don't even have an explanation as to why such an intricate lure would be necessary in the shallows. Although, what would it be was it real? How would I picture the Martaaves were the tales of the lumberjacks fact in an alternate reality? Well, tusks don't really benefit the bird regardless of what it eats. It's extra weight for flight, but even in the case of a landbound avian, it simply hinders the damaging potential of a single sharp bill. Not only that, but the skull structure of a big animal would need quite drastic changes to reaccommodate teeth, especially such massive ones. While the text only mentions tusks, this may very well be a synonym for horns. Granted, that word is in plural, and the examples of the animal kingdom tend to be singular implements. The most notable ones that resemble weapons would be the casques of the cassowaries and hornbills. Two rather distinct structures. Cassowaries are believed to use theirs to batter through dense vegetation, attract mates, fight for dominance, amplify calls, or a combination of any of them. While this does potentially mean an offensive use, when it comes to killing people, these modern terror birds are far more likely to use their deadly kicks and powerful beak. On the other hand, hornbills are not only less likely to kill humans, their casque has no offensive function. It serves to strengthen the structure of the heavy bill, occasionally doubling as amplifiers of their own. Now, not only do neither of these animals live in North America, they don't really fit the bill for an aquatic predator, and are not really tusked, nocturnal, or fluorescent either. Well, I'm afraid the animal we are going to go with will only adhere fully to one, maybe 1.5 of the criteria. But hear me out before you get mad. As per usual, exaggerations will have to be the explanations behind some of these features. Toucans. We all know and love these large-beaked, majestic animals. Their avian lips, while similar to those of hornbills, are rather light, as much of their makeup consists of spongy keratin. Still, they are impressive looking, massive, and not unlike a tusk due to their curving. Some species sport less colorful versions that are reminiscent of a bony weapon, even if their purpose is rather different. Now, toucans are native to Central and South America, which are closer but still not ideal. However, speaking of a connected landmass, it is not impossible to picture a genus or species migrating north sometime during the Pleistocene or even earlier. Perhaps their common ancestor with barbets moved to the region which came to be the Great Lakes and evolved convergently with southern toucans. Since Ramphastidae also produce species more used to colder climates, it is not even a stretch to imagine a scenario where that happened, consuming the berries and other fruit of the local forests. The development of a massive beak provided numerous advantages, most notably a way to scare lesser competitors away. The boreal forests granted plenty of nesting places in the form of tree cavities, thence also preferred by their southern relatives. So far so good, but we are still essentially talking about toucans. How would they come to resemble the Martaaves? Well, let's begin by modifying the beak and augmenting the serrations. Its primary function is to cut up their food for easier consumption, but there's an ulterior motive behind this alteration. You see, when toucans were first encountered back in the day, scholars for a while thought these tooth-like protrusions are characteristics of a predator, one that eats fish specifically. To the unseasoned eye, these may be vicious fangs, even if they are nothing more than miniature fruit knives. This kills two birds with one stone, so to speak. We get the appearance of a ravenous beast and justify why they might be thought to fancy fish more than human flesh. That's a couple of features reflected in this toucan parallel bird, but what about luminescence? Surely bioluminescence evolving for a bird is an outlandish idea. While it is not an impossibility, potentially playing a role in choosing mates, it is extremely unlikely to occur in such a short amount of time. Well, short time evolutionarily speaking. Bioluminescence is not an option, but what about fluorescence? Well, it just so happens that a huge number of birds seem to glow, we just can't see it. When put under UV light, parrots, puffins, even owls begin to emit light of their own. Well, fluorescence is not equivalent to producing light, but it holds the possibility to absorb it, then display a prolonged emission. Granted, it's not much use if we can't see it, even if the phenomenon is common among avian kin. The thing is, we don't really know what the purpose of this characteristic is. It might play some role in communication, mating, or be simply a side effect of pigmenting. Some birds are proven to not conform to this flamboyancy, even if a lot of them do. Regardless, I'd say there's a potential to take this further with not much changes required. Birds are colorful for a reason. Well, multiple reasons in fact, but let's focus on one-ish. Bright, vibrant hues as opposed to camouflage seems like a stupid idea, as predators are far more likely to spot you. Well, that kind of is the point. Wearing bright reds and iridescent blues paint you as a huge target, which is a rather Chad move when done on purpose. This display is proof that the male bird underneath is so great, carries so incredible genes, that he can survive and thrive despite the self-imposed drawback. Not only that, but they are also more noticeable by the females themselves. These are such good reasons that they became a prominent characteristic of countless animals, not just birds. Pretty convincing if you ask me, and our toucans would be prone to follow this trend. Imagine a specific circumstance with our Martaaves birds in relatively unremarkable coats. These help them remain relatively inconspicuous during the day, but they are preparing for something grand during the night. As the sun begins to set on this misty spring night, a faint glow begins to emit from the males vying for dominance and a partner. Dusk falls, and the cacophony of luminescent birds lights up the gloomy ambience. The approaching inky darkness of night is kept at bay by the dazzling chorus of the vibrant display, but not for long. The rays absorbed from the sun are finite, and the avian festival soon begins to dim. The Stygian darkness jealously envelops the contestants, but it matters little. The ritual is complete. The most deserving have already been chosen. Yes, I am theorizing a species of bird who have come to alter the frequency of the light they emit through fluorescence. This is one step further from colors only some animals would see, rendering their light far riskier, which would in turn make them sexier in the eyes of the ladies. Granted, this display would only be possible in a relatively short window every day. While the sun is up, the glow is obscured. However, as it begins to set, dusk and the earliest part of the night are excellent periods to show off their luminescence. Although the moon and stars are pitiful substitutes to the giant fireball in the sky, so the photon batteries would be depleted sooner rather than later. We must also think of the fact that the mating season is not year-round. Indeed, there are many birds that disrobe their vibrant plumage and don a safer coat for non-mission critical sections of the year. In order to ensure survivability, such would be the case for our reverse furry birds. Oh wait, I almost forgot. They forcibly mate with people in the lore. Well, this is the time I once again have to pull the exaggerated tales card. Those lumberjacks had a vivid imagination, making up so many impossible creatures. It is only fair to assume they would take the piss with actual animals too, especially such an unlikely tusk-beaked lantern of a bird. Not trying to impregnate burly woodcutters is a good survival strategy anyway. That seems to be everything to account for, save the blood-sucking brain-eating tail. As I've said though, the man-eating misconception is a result of the heavily serrated beak, and the story suffers from more than enough holes to deem it a fabrication, even in our fictional scenario. Speaking of a fictional scenario, a few of you might have caught on earlier, but I have a confession to make about the Martaaves. We are already pretty deep into the video, and considering that only a fraction of viewers watched them to the end, the select few who are listening to this get to be part of a special club. The club that knows there is no Martaaves. Like, at all. This creature was brought to life through a community project I organized a few months back. To have a special episode that officially marks the end of our first season of Monsters Dissected, it was stitched together from the most popular answers in this form. Those who do not know about this project and decided the video is too long to watch, they probably left thinking, what an odd folklore creature I have never heard of. Yeah, it would be a real shame if someone decided to make some remarks about how authentic this fearsome creature is in the comments. Imagine all the poor people who would be fooled by something that is easily disproven. Tragic. Anyway, as I've said before, this is the official end of Monsters Dissected Season 1, but Season 2 will begin soon, starting with A again. You should also prepare to say goodbye to this exact design of my avatar, as I am going to retire it after the next world building video and create a new one based on your feedback. The whole ordeal is going to take some time, not as much as the Dune video, but still. Expect a slightly less content-rich few weeks soon. Either way, thanks for accompanying me on this journey. It's been a blast. I got to know many beasts I would not normally have. Also met some lovely people, and here's to many more rounds through the mythological alphabet. Thank you, and hope to see you in Season 2 as well. Bye!